There is a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It doesn't break glasses or slam doors or leave dramatic final messages at 2 a.m. It just sits there, quiet, cold, unanswered. You stare at your phone, not because you're desperate, but because some part of you still can't make peace with the silence. You replay the last conversation, the last look, the last warmth in their voice before it all seemed to disappear behind a wall you were never invited to touch. And what hurts the most is not even that they pulled away. It's that they pulled away while making you feel like maybe you were the one who imagined everything. That kind of silence can make a person question their own reality. Because when someone was once close, once soft, once deeply present, and then suddenly becomes distant, detached, hard to reach, your mind doesn't just feel rejected. It goes hunting. It searches for clues, for explanations, for proof that you still matter. And the more you search, the more you leak your power into the empty space they left behind. But here is the brutal truth you may not want to hear. The more you chase an avoidant, the safer they feel leaving you. Not because they never cared, not because you meant nothing, but because every extra message, every emotional paragraph, every just checking in, every attempt to get clarity tells their nervous system something they don't know how to handle. Pressure, expectation, emotional demand. Even if your intentions are pure, their body doesn't always read it as love. It reads it as engulfment. And that is the part almost no one tells you. You thought your persistence proved depth. You thought your reassurance would calm them. You thought if they could just feel how real you are, they would stop running. But avoidant attachment does not respond to intensity the way secure love does. It does not move toward warmth when warmth feels like heat. It often backs away the moment closeness starts requiring emotional exposure. So while you were trying to save the bond, they may have been trying to survive it. That doesn't make your pain smaller. It makes it make sense. Avoidant people are not cold in the way people assume. They are often flooded. Their feelings do not disappear. They become too loud inside a system trained to equate need with danger. Their amygdala, the alarm center of the brain, can interpret intimacy as threat long before their conscious mind has words for it. The nervous system speeds up. Cortisol rises. The body wants space, not because love is absent, but because vulnerability feels like losing control. And when the body is overwhelmed, the mind will create distance and call it logic. They'll say they need time. They'll say they're confused. They'll say they don't know what they feel. Sometimes they even believe that. Because when overwhelm hits, attachment does something strange. The heart feels too much, and the mind shuts the door to keep the whole system from drowning. What looks like indifference is often emotional overactivation, wearing a numb face. What looks like not caring can actually be an attempt not to collapse. So no, they didn't necessarily stop caring. They may have cared so much that their defense system took over. And if you've been blaming yourself for their withdrawal, if you've been dissecting your words, your tone, your timing, your worth, pause here. Their distance is not proof that you were too much. It may simply be proof that intimacy touched a wound in them they never learned to hold. But this is where most people lose themselves. Because once you understand the wound, you want to love them through it. You want to be patient enough, good enough, calm enough, irresistible enough to make them feel safe. And that urge is human, beautiful even. But if you are not careful, empathy becomes self-abandonment. Understanding becomes overextending. Compassion becomes pursuit. And pursuit is exactly what keeps the pattern alive. There is one concept that changes everything, and it is not manipulation. It is not revenge. It is not a trick to make them panic. It is silence. Not angry silence. Not silence used like a weapon. Not the kind of silence that secretly screams, "Look what you made me do." I mean grounded silence. The silence of someone who finally stops running after what is running from them. The silence of someone whose nervous system no longer volunteers to do all the emotional labor. The silence of someone who refuses to beg for the bare minimum and calls that self-respect. Because silence does something words can't. Words give the avoidant more material to defend against. Silence gives them space to hear themselves. When you stop flooding the gap with reassurance, questions, explanations, sadness, and hope, something begins to happen in the emptiness they asked for. The noise dies down. Their defensive system no longer has a visible force to push against. The pressure drops. The chase ends. And in that unexpected stillness, their own attachment can finally rise to the surface. This is where desire begins to ignite. Not because silence is magic, because it removes interference. Think about it. When you are always there, emotionally available, predictably reaching, carefully interpreting every shift in their tone, they never had to fully confront your absence. They got to feel you without risking themselves. They got the emotional connection without the emotional responsibility. Your presence cushioned them from the consequences of their own detachment. But when that cushion disappears, reality enters. Now your absence has texture. Now the good morning text doesn't arrive. Now the emotional doorway they assumed would stay open is closed. Now the room they left feels different when they look back and realize you are no longer standing there, waiting. And that is when the avoidant mind starts doing what your anxious mind was doing all along. Replaying, wondering, checking, remembering. Not because they suddenly became a different person overnight, but because the nervous system often values what it can no longer control. Dopamine, the chemical of pursuit and anticipation, does not surge most intensely when something is guaranteed. It surges in uncertainty, in mystery, in intermittent access, in the sudden realization that what was once available may no longer be. This is why your silence can shake them more than your tears ever did. Because your tears told them you were still there. Your silence makes them feel you leaving. Imagine them at night, distracted all day, busy enough to pretend they're fine. They open an app without thinking. No message from you. They tell themselves it doesn't matter. A few minutes later, they check again. Nothing. They think of sending something casual, something small, something that doesn't reveal too much. They stop themselves. Pride, fear, confusion. Then they remember the way you used to reach out first, the way you used to soften the distance before it became real. And for the first time, they have to sit inside the emotional climate they created without your warmth regulating it. That is not peace. That is confrontation. And it gets deeper. They start remembering the details they ignored when you were accessible. Your voice, your patience, the way you looked at them without demanding performance, the safety of your consistency, the emotional home you offered while they were busy protecting themselves from the very thing they needed. What they suppressed to feel in control starts rising now that control is threatened. Missing you doesn't always happen in the moment they leave. Sometimes it begins when they realize you actually let them go. That is the power of true silence. It reveals who was coasting on your devotion. But listen carefully, because this part matters. Silence only works when it is real. If you go silent while internally waiting for every second to produce a result, if you turn your restraint into a countdown, if your energy is still wrapped around whether they notice, whether they miss you, whether they come back, then your body is still chasing, just quietly. And people feel that, not literally through telepathy, but through what you do next. The impulsive story view, the strategic post, the accidental text, the emotional relapse disguised as closure. Real silence is not performance. It is withdrawal of access. It is the moment you stop managing their comfort at the expense of your own nervous system. Because let's be honest, some of you are not heartbroken only because they left. You are exhausted because you have been carrying two emotional worlds on one set of shoulders. You have been decoding mixed signals, swallowing your needs, staying calm when you were bleeding, acting understanding when your body was starving for stability. You called it love, but part of it was survival. Part of it was the hope that if you became easy enough to love, they would stop making you earn what should have been mutual. That hope is a dangerous drug. And like all drugs, it gives you temporary relief while deepening the dependency. So when you choose silence, you are not just shifting the dynamic with them, you are breaking an addiction inside yourself. You are teaching your nervous system that uncertainty does not require pursuit, that longing does not require self-erasure, that their withdrawal is not a command for you to abandon your center and chase connection through pain. This is where your power starts returning. Slowly at first. You stop checking whether they viewed your story. You stop rewriting texts you'll never send. You stop fantasizing about the perfect final message that will finally make them understand. You let the misunderstandings stand. You let the silence breathe. You let them feel the shape of your absence. And then, something almost eerie begins to happen. Their energy shifts. Maybe it starts with something small, a random check-in, a low-effort message, a reaction to a story, a, "Hey, hope you're okay." Not quite vulnerable, not quite brave, but unmistakably a reach. Then maybe another. Then more curiosity, more presence, more attempts to feel where you are without asking directly. Because now the power dynamic has changed. They are no longer responding to your pursuit. They are responding to your non-availability. And for many avoidants, that is when desire becomes undeniable. Not because they are evil, not because they enjoy games, but because distance allows them to feel what closeness made them suppress. When you are too close, their defenses activate. When you step back, their feelings can breathe. This is the paradox of avoidant desire. They often feel safest wanting you when they are not being asked to hold you. And if you do this right, they start chasing the emotional certainty they once took for granted. They begin to miss the person who no longer over-explains. They feel the loss of the one who used to reach. They become haunted by the calm they mistook for weakness. But here is the warning. The moment they return, the pattern will try to return with them. That is where most people collapse. Because the second an avoidant reaches back, all your old hope lights up like a city at night. Your body floods with dopamine, relief, validation, proof that the silence worked. And if you are not careful, you will hand back your power in the first 5 minutes. You will over-respond, over-give, over-open. You will mistake contact for change. Do not do that. A returning avoidant is not the same as a transformed avoidant. Missing you is not the same as being ready for intimacy. Wanting access is not the same as being able to sustain closeness. Desire is not devotion. Read that again in your bones. Desire is not devotion. If they come back, let them come all the way back. Let them show consistency. Let them tolerate emotional honesty. Let them name what happened instead of gliding over it. Let them meet you where your self-respect now lives. Because if your silence awakened their desire, but your standards do not protect your heart, you will simply become available to the same wound in a more expensive form. You are not here to be wanted for a moment. You are here to be met. And if they cannot meet you, then your silence was still not a loss. It was a rescue. Because the deepest transformation in all of this is not that they start chasing. It's that you stop needing them to. That is the real shift. The one no one can take from you. You stop seeing their confusion as a verdict on your worth. You stop interpreting distance as evidence that you are unlovable. You stop auditioning for emotional security in rooms that only offer uncertainty. You become the kind of person who can feel desire without kneeling before it, who can love deeply without abandoning themselves, who can let people reveal their capacity without trying to educate them into tenderness. That version of you is dangerous in the best way. Calm, clear, unhooked. You no longer break yourself trying to be unforgettable, because you understand something now. The right people do not need to lose you to value you, and the ones who only awaken when you disappear are not always soulmates. Sometimes they are just finally meeting the consequences of their own avoidance. So if you are in that silent season right now, if every part of you wants to reach, explain, fix, plead, prove, pause. Breathe through the craving. Let the wave pass through your body without turning it into action. Let your nervous system learn a new story, one where silence is not abandonment, but alignment. One where stillness is not weakness, but command. One where you do not chase the emotionally unavailable into loving you. You return to yourself. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. Whether they come back or not, you are no longer standing in the ashes of their withdrawal asking what was wrong with you. You are standing in your own presence, feeling the ground under your feet again. Your worth is no longer hanging from the hook of someone else's readiness. Your heart is no longer begging to be chosen by someone terrified of choosing. You become harder to manipulate, harder to confuse, harder to keep in limbo. Because now you understand the difference between love and access, between chemistry and safety, between being desired and being cherished. And that understanding changes your face, your energy, your decisions, your entire life. So yes, the avoidance desire for you may ignite in your silence. They may start missing, wondering, reaching, obsessing over the emptiness where your devotion used to be. That can happen. But the greatest thing your silence will ignite is not their hunger. It is your freedom. The moment you stop chasing what withdraws, you stop teaching people that your love can be earned cheaply. The moment you stop begging for clarity from someone committed to confusion, you become clear. The moment you stop performing loyalty in the presence of inconsistency, your soul comes back online. And that is the final truth. You were never powerless. You were just emotionally overinvested in someone who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Now that changes. Now your silence has weight. Now your absence has meaning. Now your energy belongs to you. Let them feel the distance. Let them face the quiet. Let them wonder what it feels like to lose someone who once loved them with open hands. And you? You do not wait in the dark anymore. You rise. You steady. You become the one thing their avoidance could never control. A person who knows their worth so deeply, silence no longer feels like punishment. It feels like power.